All right, welcome to another episode of the Castles Cast. My name's Eamon Castles. Joining me today is going to be Bruce Veliz and Elie Deglaoui. We're going to be going over a whole lot, including Jayson Tatum's up and coming return, the 2026 draft class, the surge in Charlotte Hornets and San Antonio Spurs. It should be a ton of fun. So, without any further ado, let's just get into the episode. All right, joining the show now is Elie Deglaoui and Bruce Velez. How you boys doing today?
Doing all right, man. Appreciate you having us on again.
Yeah, doing great. Once again, happy to be back on the pod and to discuss some great basketball.
Absolutely happy to have you guys on, especially on such a joyous day because just an hour or so before we started recording, some fantastic news came out that Jayson Tatum is going to indeed play this season, and he's likely going to return on Friday, which is tomorrow or today at the time that you guys are listening, against the Dallas Mavericks. Honestly, not too shocking of an announcement given that things were sort of trending for him to come back, and that they're playing the Mavericks at home before a little road stretch, and of course, they played the Mavericks in the finals. Anyway, what is your guys' sort of takeaway and expectations for Tatum's return?
I'm just upset that my new favorite show is going to be canceled. What's it called? The Quiet Work, his little mini series he's been doing on YouTube. I guess that's officially done now, which I'm upset about. But no, all jokes aside, I mean, I'm hyped that Tatum's coming back. Just to see him back on the court is going to be great. I fully expect. I would probably guess for at least the rest of the season, including the playoffs. I feel like we're going to see Tatum just coming off the bench. I feel like we're going to see Tatum just playing here and there. We're going to see, I think, some sort of minutes restriction the rest of the way, which that could just be me playing it super cautious. I mean, an Achilles injury is not something to mess around with. Obviously, they're going to know more than I do. So I could be wrong, but I would just bet that that's how it's going to be. Regardless, I think having his playmaking, just his gravity on the court is going to be huge. And I'm just excited. Even if he stinks, even if he shoots 0 for 10 every single game and turns the ball over 8 times, like I'm just gonna be happy to see him back on the court. And it could be tomorrow or today, kind of like we were saying earlier when this gets up. So I'm very happy to see him back on the court soon.
Yeah, I'm just happy for him that he was able to get through this process and it wasn't too complicated of one. It's obviously has been kind of discussed that he was going to be coming back this season, but it was never for certain until Shams kind of said that he will be coming back this season, looking to make that comeback, obviously, in the game versus the Mavs. But even if it's not versus the game versus the Mavs, or if it's just a little bit in like 10, 15 minutes versus the Mavs, just to have him back for at least 6 weeks to ramp up before the postseason to kind of get everything underneath himself, to get comfortable within this team. Obviously, they did lose a lot of pieces last year with Drew Holiday, Horford, Porzingis. They even lost Anthony Simons from when they brought into this season, so Tatum adjusting to this new squad and where he's going to fit in is going to be very solid. And I'm excited to kind of end the discourse of what as well with the Jaylen Brown and the Jayson Tatum team from all the random outsiders, because I know as all of us being fans of the Celtics, we all appreciate both Jays, and that's always what the sentiment has been from a majority of the Celtics fans that actually care about this team, is that it is the Jays team. It's not one of their team, it is both of their team. So I'm going to be excited for that narrative to finally be cease to exist and for Tatum to insert himself firmly back into this squad, maybe not right away, but eventually, to that where they can both coexist and prove that they can be a dominant Eastern Conference team, because they still have been a top Eastern Conference team without Tatum, and I don't expect that to slow down with his addition like many other people think that could happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think he can only be additive. Like, who knows how many points he's going to score, what he's going to shoot from the field, but and like you guys were saying, like just his playmaking, his rebounding, the gravity that he brings, all of that, he can only really be additive to a team that's already a top 3 seed in the conference. And I mean, I'm not going to put any expectations in terms of how many points or minutes he's going to get. Just looking forward to him making a positive all around impact. And this is obviously just in general a huge swing factor in the title race. When you're adding a guy who's been at minimum a top 10 player in the league throughout the past few seasons to a team that's already one of the best teams in the East. I think that's a massive swing factor that really needs to be accounted for. I do personally expect Tatum to start, and maybe I'm wrong because we have seen like when Wemby returned, for instance, he came off the bench for a period of time, but it is just for whatever reason it's hard for me to imagine Tatum coming off the bench. But maybe when he returns, that's going to be the big moment when he checks in for the first time, and then the Garden just erupts. So I guess that is possible, but I always sort of imagined him starting and then sort of actually taken Sam Hauser's spot in this starting lineup. I do think they'll need Baylor Shireman to stick with that starting group for defensive purposes. His defense has been really valuable over the past few weeks since he's been inserted into that starting lineup. But I mean, hey, who knows? Like with Joe Mazzulla, you never know what to expect. And even though the report made it sound like he's definitely coming back this year, maybe it's Friday. I'm 100% expecting it to be Friday. Based on the fact that, well, it's against the Mavericks, it's on national television, all of this. But Tatum is going to return at home. There's no way he's going to return on a road game. This is an important up-and-coming road stretch, so I think he wants to be back for that, especially to prepare for the playoffs. And yeah, I just think all the stars are aligning, and I mean, when you look at some of the ticket prices, it certainly indicates that he's going to be back, so I'm fully anticipating Tatum to be back, and just, yeah, super excited.
Yeah, I said this to you guys both before we went live, but I'm very happy that I bought the tickets for the game that I'm going to in a couple weeks before this announcement, or else my grandma would be paying a hefty price to get into this game, and I'm glad that we could save her some of her cold hard Benjamins in that regard.
No, absolutely. That is huge. In terms of just like how this shapes the Eastern Conference playoff race, I'm curious to get your guys' opinions on this. In general, like hypothetically, if it was announced that Tatum's not going to return versus now that it's announced that he is going to return, how does this shift your expectations on the Celtics' chances to come out of the East again?
I mean, I definitely feel like it boosts their odds. I feel like the part that everybody's kind of overlooking, I feel like, is just the fact that Jayson Tatum is just pretty good at basketball. Will there be chemistry issues? I don't know. Maybe not. He knows how to play. He's gonna, I think, buy into whatever his role is gonna be. Joe Mazzulla, I think, obviously has established himself as a great coach. He's gonna figure it out. Like, I have full confidence that they're gonna figure it out. And this was a team that was already the number 2 seed in the East. Even if you get Tatum back at like 60 or 75%, whatever it ends up being, that's still better than not having him at all. And like I said, this was a team that was already the number 2 seed in a wide open Eastern Conference. I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily going to make them the favorites to come out of the East. Detroit is still incredible. And I mean, I'm not going to ignore the fact that Charlotte just blew us out and they've been the hottest team since the start of the year. So it's definitely going to help. I mean, as a Celtics fan, I'm already maybe, imagining what June basketball is going to be like again. But I don't want to get too carried away. I don't want to think that far ahead. But I do think this is going to be a really good thing for a team that, like I keep saying, was already in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I have to agree with Elie here. I think it definitely gives the Celtics a general boost. And the one thing about Tatum's game that we can all recognize as well, is that he can do everything for this team, right? He can shoot the three-pointer, he can play make, he can defend, he can rebound, he's a jack of all trades. So it's not like he's specialized in one thing that the Celtics are missing or going to need to really necessarily implement for them to kind of get this jump boost. He's only just going to add in the areas that they are lacking or even make better, which I think is just going to keep propelling this Celtics team to be dominant. We talk about the little rivalry with the Knicks last year. The Knicks were supposed to be this best team in the Eastern Conference, and they're already behind the Celtics without Jayson Tatum. And unfortunately for those Knicks fans that may be listening, I don't think that they're going to be able to pass the Celtics with Tatum coming back. I think that the top 4 in the East is pretty kind of lock solid right now. I feel like those 4 are kind of the ones in competition, but with Tatum coming back to the for the Celtics team, I think it definitely propels them to be that top tier second case competing with the Detroit Pistons to be that eventual comer out of the conference, which will be very, very exciting and could give that Celtics that edge that they necessarily need to make the finals again.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, Tatum, like I said before, he can only be additive, and I think he's going to be a seamless fit with this team. The familiarity with the system, and then, I mean, obviously they do have some new pieces, but generally it's a fairly similar team to last year. He knows how to play with JB, obviously, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard. So yeah, I think he can only be additive, and like you guys were saying, he's just such a gifted all-around player. He can only help in terms of like, it's so hard for me to like pick a team to come out of the East at this point, just because we don't know what the final matchups are. But I will say, when you look at this Celtics team, especially compared to some of the other teams in the East, they just don't have a clear flaw, and I think that's something that will really benefit them. You watch them, they don't really have any clear weaknesses. You look at the numbers, that tracks as well. Compared to some of the teams, I mean, as great as the Pistons have been, I do think it's a real question about their 3-point shooting in the playoffs as well as the secondary creation. You look at the Knicks, their two best players are just sorely below average on defense, and frankly, the vibes have just been off with that team all season long. I'm not saying that either of those two teams can't come out of the East. I just think there is some real questions and flaws, whereas with the Celtics, as crazy as it sounds, given the expectations that all of us, including Celtics fans, had going into the season, they don't have as clear of a flaw, in my opinion, and I think that could really bode well for them. It is crazy to think, just me personally, I've had to reevaluate my expectations for this team time and again throughout the season. Even if you had asked me, like, in January, like, do you think this Celtics team is, like, legit contenders or a legit threat to come to the East? I was going to say probably not. But now, especially with Tatum back, I think that changes everything. And, yeah, who knows where I'll stand in April, but I think there's a good chance that I pick the Celtics to come out of the East. Frankly, I think whoever comes out of the Western Conference is going to win it all, but I would say there's a very solid chance that I'll end up picking the Celtics to represent the East.
Yeah, I like that. And a lot of that credit as well has to go to someone that should be in the running for Coach of the Year, and that is Joe Mazzulla, who has brought in the best out of these guys. He said at the beginning of the season that there wasn't going to be a concrete set starting lineup, and he's remained that to a T. He had guys like Josh Mina, who was on the Celtics, running in lineups in the starting lineup for some times, had Jordan Walsh, has had Baylor Shireman at impacts, like you mentioned, Amen, who has been really, really solid for this team. So like we've talked about, could Tatum start? Could come off the bench? That's all going to be up to Joe Mazzulla, but a lot of that credit goes to him in making these players and bringing the best out of them, especially with the new additions as well, and Nikola Vucevic, who's also been really good with this team in his little stint with the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, Missoula's been absolutely fantastic, and I know he's had his detractors even within the Celtics fan base somehow, but if you're still not a believer in Missoula, I don't know what to tell you. This guy's incredible. He's a basketball genius. I think his offense is a little bit misunderstood. I've talked about it before, but I think it's worth mentioning. He just creates open shots. That's the bottom line. They obviously shoot a lot of threes. A lot of those open shots happen to be threes. However, his offense isn't purely built around the three-point shot like a lot of people think. It's built around creating mismatches and then ultimately creating open shots. And when you look at how Tatum can fit in to that, most notably as like a primary creator type, which the offense, again, it's been built around the Jays as these primary creators. I think it's going to be seamless, as well as being a spot-up shooter. I think we could see him just in that role a little bit more, especially as he eases back into playing shape. But yeah, I think his fit will just be seamless, and Missoula absolutely deserves a ton of credit. And I mean, I'd be shocked at this point if he doesn't win Coach of the Year, and I don't even think that's like my Celtics bias talking. I feel like if you surveyed 100 NBA fans, 90 of them would probably say he's Coach of the Year.
Definitely agree with that.
All right, I think we can move on to a team that we briefly mentioned while talking about the Celtics, and that's the hottest team in basketball. That's right, the Charlotte Hornets. You guessed it. On a 6-game win streak, coming off a 30-point win or close to 30-point win against the Celtics last night. And then just since the top of the calendar, like Elie mentioned, they have the best net rating in basketball, which is absolutely insane. I believe they have a 20-2 record with their starting lineup when healthy. And then that starting lineup has a plus 31 net rating. I promise I didn't just like memorize these stats. I actually did a little feature piece on the Hornets, so they're fresh in my brain right now. But yeah, what have been your takeaways from this recent stretch from the Hornets?
I feel like it's a big enough sample size to say it's legit. I definitely think this is more than just kind of a hot flash or like a hot streak they're on right now. Like they're they're looking very good, and they're doing it really in every area. They're doing it on both sides of the ball, and I feel like I was actually kind of high on Charlotte coming into the season, and I feel like even the stretch they're on now is way better than I expected them to be. I was a fan of Concanipple. He's been even better than I thought he would be, at least right away. LaMelo Ball is becoming a little bit more of a team player. I would say just kind of making smarter plays and not doing as many, still some, but not as many one-legged threes as he used to. And it just kind of feels like everybody's really bought into the system. I don't know how far they're going to go. I think they're legit. I think they're definitely going to be a team to watch in the playoffs, and I think they obviously have a really bright future. But I think they could play some really good basketball into April and May, and maybe beyond that.
Yeah, this Charlotte Hornets team has been very impressive. I personally, looking back at my predictions from this year, just checked. I had them as the ninth seed in the East. That's currently where they slated are now. So I was a little bit higher on this offensive kind of shakeup. I felt with LaMelo and Con Knipple and Brandon Miller, they'd be able to do a little bit here, but they definitely have exceeded my expectations on that front with being just so dominant. And we talked about this in our chats, but I can't believe that, there were rumblings of them possibly trading LaMelo before the trade deadline. And there was discussions on if this team was going to tank and be bad, because they have clearly shifted in the year of 2026 to put on this new front. And a lot of that credit goes to the players as well. But similar to Joe Mazzulla, I have to give a lot of credit to Charles Lee, who did come from the Celtics organization. I know we all know that, but maybe some other listeners don't. He was the assistant coach, the head assistant with Sam Cassell when the Celtics did win the NBA championship, and he went over to Charlotte and has embraced a lot of that culture and building that identity, which a lot of teams around the NBA have been doing recently. One of the teams I cover, the Phoenix Suns, have been doing that, but Charles Lee with Charlotte has been kind of changing that momentum of, just going to Charlotte and putting up just random numbers and just trying to get hoops up and kind of not really caring. He has built that kind of internally, and it's really resembled with a lot of these players. Obviously, Khan kind of shooting through the limits here, but Brandon Miller has been really healthy this season. He's been very solid. They also just have a lot of just fun, intriguing players like Moussa Diabate, who I really, really like. Ryan Kalkbrenner, who as a rookie has been playing some solid minutes for them. I liked his addition as a draft pick this year. And then they traded for Kobe White, who can add a little bit more of an offensive punch as well, which I really like. So ultimately for the Charlotte's team, I do think they are a little bit guard and offensive centric, which kind of just fits their play style. And maybe in the next couple of years, we'll have to readjust things. But I really like where they are heading this season and projected to head through the future, especially with a Southeast division that's a little shaky with kind of how they're building their teams. I think Charlotte could be maybe a new staple in that division for the next couple of years if they continue to hit on their picks and continue to soar.
Yeah, absolutely. Just another team that I've had to continue reevaluating my expectations for all season. And yeah, at this point, I do feel very comfortable saying that this isn't just some random hot stretch, and that I do feel comfortable saying that they're going to be a playoff team. They might have to go through the play-in, or I could maybe even see them jumping up to that 6th seed, because I believe they're only 2.5 games back of the Sixers. But one way or another, I think this is a playoff team, and I think this is a team that the top 3 or 4 seeds in the East just don't want to play. Simply put, especially just how good they've been in recent games. And just the youth movement that they have is really impressive. I'm not saying that they're going to upset any of the top teams in the East, but I guarantee this team is going to be a tough out in the playoffs. They're going to take teams to their absolute brink. I mean, I think a series with the Pistons would be a lot of fun, especially because of that, viral fight that happened a few weeks ago. But yeah, just in general, this Hornets team is just such a terrific story, and it's really crazy, like you guys were talking about. Thinking back to where we were with this team in November when they started 4 and then it looked like they might trade LaMelo, and now they're going to make the playoffs probably for the first time in 10 years, which is crazy to think about that they haven't made it for that long. But just an awesome story overall. And Bruce, I'm happy you brought up the point about Charles Lee. I think he deserves a ton of credit. There's a ton of similarities to this Celtic system with the Hornets. When you look at, obviously, the focus on the three-point shot, but also how they get there by attacking these mismatches and the ball movement, the off-ball movement's really cool. Some of the sets they run are super similar. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch. And I mean, this trio, I think, outside of the San Antonio Spurs, this trio of Con Knipple, Brandon Miller, and LaMelo Ball is the best young trio in the entire NBA. And it's really just incredible. And I mean, they all fit together really nicely too. I mean, you look at LaMelo, like you said, Elie, he's buying into more of that facilitator role. And then Con Knipple has been maybe the Rookie of the Year favorite at this point. And then you're looking at Brandon Miller as well. I mean, everything just fits so perfectly with this team, and it's been just not just a great story, but I think they're really building something special to the point where we look ahead 5 years, they could be legitimately a perennial title contender, and I think that's super impressive. And this new coaching staff and new front office deserves just a ton of credit.
Yeah, I think to your point of them being a tough playoff matchup, I'm not going to compare them on the same play style, but I think they're very resemblant of the Orlando Magic from last year when they played the Boston Celtics, where they were a lower team, but have had some late season success, and nobody really wanted to face them because how physical they were going to be on the defensive end. I feel like for the opposite kind of reasons for Charlotte, a team isn't going to really want to play them due to the fact of how flamethrowing and heat they can get on the offensive end. And if a team like maybe the Knicks has some struggles defensively versus them, or maybe even like a Raptors matchup would be kind of cool. I think that could be really fun for the Hornets to kind of get in there in the playoffs and be at least a fun competition team. And then, like you mentioned, with Charles Lee and stuff like that as well, they've also gotten some former Celtics. They used to have Drew Peterson on a two-way, and now they just got Xavier Tillman. So I really do like that he's getting some familiar faces, and who knows, we might see some former Boston Celtics that have gone through the trees go over to the Charlotte Hornets and maybe be able to be some key veterans down the line, which would be nice and interesting too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just everything about this rebuild has been awesome, and I did like their offseason moves, but I didn't expect them to be nearly this good. I thought they could be like a fringe playoff team. I don't remember off the top of my head where I had them, but I think it was like 11 or 12. I think I had them outside the play-in. So yeah, just exceeded all expectations. And I quickly want to give a shout out to Brandon Miller. I think like Con Knipple, he gets most of the headlines, rightfully so. He's having a surprise like rookie of the year level season, but Brandon Miller to me is probably the most underrated young player in the league. When you look at his scoring ability at all three levels, his on-ball defense has been really huge, and I mean, just he's kind of the go-to scorer for this team in some ways, like maybe him or Khan, but he's just incredible, and I think he has a lot more upside than people realize. I mean, he had the comments about like looking up to Paul George, and you can really see a lot of those similarities between those two when watching him play. So yeah, just a super exciting young player that I feel like has gone a little under the radar and all the excitement about Khan, and then LaMelo's like the classic like star of this team. But yeah, super fun team.
This is why you don't give up on players after 2 years, aka Twitter people. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of funny, but yeah.
No, most definitely. Giving up on players after 2 years is crazy. But yeah, any closing thoughts on the Hornets before moving ahead to our next topic? All right, cool. I think we can go ahead and talk about the Western Conference a little bit. And I mean, I guess we can start off with the San Antonio Spurs, who have continued to play some amazing basketball and have really separated themselves from everyone like 3 through 6 in the West. So my question for you guys is: are the Spurs clearly like your second favorite in the West? And do you have any potential concerns about this team come playoff time?
I mean, I definitely think they're second, and to be completely honest with you, I think you could make a case that they should be the favorite coming out of the West. I'm not saying I would put them there, but I mean, they beat OKC what 3 times this season. They, I think, are far and away better than every other team in the West. I mean, Denver is kind of concerning. I'm not as high on Houston as I was earlier in the year, and then I feel like outside of maybe OKC, there isn't really anybody in the West that's going to give them a serious, a serious run for their money in the playoffs. My one concern, and I feel like this is kind of the one concern that everybody has, is who is going to be the definitive second guy next to Wembanyama. It hasn't really mattered yet, but is it, because some days it's going to be Castle, some days it's going to be De'Aaron Fox. It's kind of one of those things where Wemby is pretty clearly the number one guy, but in the playoffs, obviously it would be beneficial to have a clear-cut second guy. Other than that, though, I mean, I feel like this is a team that is built to win now and in the long run, and I definitely think they could be. They are a serious contender to make it to the finals this year.
Yeah, I mean, I remember at the beginning of the season, we were drinking that Spurs Kool-Aid, but I didn't expect the Spurs Kool-Aid to be this dominant. Sheesh, they had, what, a 15-game win streak at one point before losing to the Knicks? Just absolute insanity from this San Antonio Spurs squad. Like you mentioned, Ely, Victor Wembanyama has been absolutely insane. I think has propelled himself into these type of conversations that we expected him to be in his third year with this Spurs team, and it's really carried this squad to be a top tier squad. And like you mentioned, from looking over some of these other teams in the West, right, I clearly think they are that number 2 team, right, with the Thunder, might even be contending with them. I think the Rockets, just their late game woes of clutch time offense isn't going to be enough to maybe get past this Spurs team. The Nuggets have had some injuries, even though size-wise, I think a Wemby versus Jokic battle could be very interesting for the playoffs. I will say the Timberwolves, with their size, with Rudy Gobert, with Julius Randle, with Naz Reid, having those big bodies, and ultimately having Anthony Edwards, who is just so clutch in some big moments and taking some late game shots. I do have to say that if they were to run into the Timberwolves, I do think it could be a very fun, very close playoff series. I would say that I think the Spurs barely edge them out at this point, but I think that's kind of one of their best competitors for them here alongside the Thunder. But definitely in second in command, I think definitely have a chance to even make the finals, as we've seen that little precedent from the NBA play-in teams that have lost these last couple of years is that they make the NBA finals. So maybe that's another blessing for the Spurs. Their one weakness, though, I will say, kind of what to Elie said, is the second star and who they're really going to have. And then ultimately as well, in my opinion, is when Victor does come off the court here in the playoffs. Obviously, Luke has been pretty solid, but are they going to have enough to really command against some of these other bigger teams? Because even though we have mentioned it, the Thunder do have size if they have Chet and Hartenstein. We also know that the Rockets have their size with Sengun, Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith, Clint Capella. The Timberwolves also have their size with their big guys, like I mentioned earlier, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, and Naz Reid. So that could come some problem issues for the Spurs as well. Ultimately, though, I will say that they are the second team, not just because of the standings, but just because of how dominant Wembanyama has been. And I think Wemby versus Shea in a conference finals, man, oh man, does that set up the future for the NBA and the Western Conference to be a really, really bright one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's hard not to say they're the second favorite or even the main favorite to come out of the West. And even as a guy who, if you remember last year, I'm a big experienced guy, I don't really have as many concerns about the Spurs in that regard, because Wemby simply breaks all the rules. And he's an alien. He's insane on both ends of the court. Personally, I'm not like as concerned about like the second option, quote unquote. Maybe I am concerned about like Castle in a playoff setting as a second year player, but I'm a huge De'Aaron Fox guy. Now that my guy Chris Paul is officially out of the league, De'Aaron Fox might be my favorite like non-Celtic or non-Timberwolf. Him or Curry. So I'm very high on De'Aaron Fox, and we've seen it in that one playoff series he did play in Sacramento. He was fantastic. So I do think Fox can be that for this team. The non-Wemby minutes, like you mentioned, Bruce, that is a little bit of a concern. You look at the on-off stuff, it's pretty significant split there, especially on defense. I mean, he's just so valuable on that end of the court. So that is definitely something I might flag. But I mean, you can sort of flag these things with like every team. Even the Thunder, there's like potential issues to flag. So it's not like overly concerning to the point where I'm like, hey, they definitely can't win it. I will say the other thing is Wemby dealing with physicality. I think that's going to be a big game plan thing headed into the playoffs, and that might be like my main holdup, other than like the non-Wemby minutes and then potentially some experience. But yeah, I think ultimately they're fine because, I mean, we saw it last week when they played the Pistons. They were super physical on Wemby. They were just trying to beat the shit out of him all night. And it didn't really matter because even if Wemby didn't have that monster score night, he's the best defensive player on the planet by a wide margin. And that's enough for him to impact the game in just such a significant way that even if he has like an off night where he scores like 12 points, like, okay, whatever, they have enough offense to make that up around him, whether that's Fox, Castle, Devin Vassell, even like Dylan Harper, who knows, and he's just so impactful on that end that it really changes everything. But that is just a minor thing that I will be watching for in the playoffs. Time and again, we've seen Wemby just struggle with like not even like taller players of it because he's 7'4", but just guys that are super strong. I mean, going back to that Timberwolves game back in like January, December, Julius Randle played some of the best defense I've ever seen Julius Randle play against Wemby, and it was really just because of his like enormous strength. I think that's something Wemby still needs to work on. Shown some positive strides in that regard, but he is still thin, and I think in the playoffs that could potentially affect things. But I mean, ultimately, this Spurs team has exceeded even my high expectations, like Bruce mentioned. And who knows, when we're doing our playoff preview in April, I might just pick them to come out of the West. I think when you look at this team, they are kind of tailor-made to beat the Thunder with all the guards they have, with how well they take care of the ball, with their size. And then the Wemby factor, I think there's a lot that goes in their right direction. And when you look at the past few years, like the Knicks in some ways were tailor-made to beat the Celtics. When you look at Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, obviously the Celtics dominated them in the regular season, and then shit the bed in the playoffs. That's a different story. And then you look at like the Timberwolves dethroning the Nuggets with their front court size. In some ways, they were like tailor made to contain, keyword contain, Nikola Jokic. So I could see that potentially as a trend. But yeah, who knows? I mean, just another one of the best stories in a team that's exceeded all expectations.
Yeah, the Spurs, man. I just can't believe we thought. I think we predicted the sixth seed or something like that. That's just insanity. Like we definitely knew they were going to be doing something right, but did not expect them to take this leap, and especially not to get a 15-game win streak. I think that kind of took everyone to really, especially people that don't really watch the Spurs or tune into many games, take by storm. Because I know I asked you on your last pod which teams you'd be watching, and the Spurs are one of your mainstays. So I know you're not in that group, but for some other people, definitely got their eyes on some Wemby action and maybe actually realized how dominant of a beast he can be.
Yeah, no, for sure. Kind of crazy stat along those lines. Spurs, I remember their over under win total was 43 and a half games. And I know we're like kind of headed towards the stretch run, but they've already hit 44 wins. So I think that just puts it into perspective a little bit. But yeah, do you guys have any other thoughts on the Spurs?
I remember. I remember when we did the preseason rankings. I remember thinking, I forget where I had the Spurs exactly, but I remember having them pretty low, and I remember saying like, yeah, I could see them being a little bit better than where I have them. Yeah, they've far exceeded my expectations. I mean, I've been a big Wemby guy for a while. Like, I never had any doubts that he was going to be a star in the NBA. And I mean, I'm definitely scared about kind of where it's going to go from here. Like, he's going to take over the league if he hasn't already. And I mean, I think genuinely this might just kind of be the start of whatever is going to end up happening in San Antonio.
Yeah, legit. I mean, when you look at Wemby, what he's doing in his third year, and the fact that there's still like areas where you could sort of like nitpick, oh, he could get a little bit better here. And guys, he's only gonna get better. So yeah, like you said, Eli, this is legit only the start for the Spurs, and that's a scary thought. I guess a question sort of popped up along those same lines. When you look at the Spurs this year, even dating back a couple years ago with the Thunder, I guess last year with the Rockets, these young teams that have never made the playoffs before, and then they suddenly take a massive leap in the standings, and all of a sudden they're a top three team in their respective conference. Are there any teams looking at the standings that you could see making like a shocking jump like that next year, or do you think this is just like a 3 year trend of sorts?
Like a Charlotte type of thing.
Like a Charlotte, yeah, no, that's a good one because I mean, who knows? They might not make the playoffs, and then top three seed in the East. I would definitely consider Charlotte there.
I'd say Charlotte for sure, and then I think one of the teams that I think could maybe make that jump, also in their division is the Hawks. I know we talked about them this year. A lot of people were high on them, but they have a lot of salary cap this year. Maybe they bring back Jonathan Kaminga, but maybe they look to do other moves out there. They were rumored to trade Onyeka Okongwu, even though he's been really good. So I don't know if they have their front court really solidified yet. So they could be an interesting team to take a rise. And then another team I'm going to mention, I don't think it's going to happen, but anything is possible in this NBA, the Trailblazers. They've been crawling around this kind of play-in area for a little while, similar to the Hornets and stuff like that. And they got those veterans, had some injuries this year, and honestly, their offense hasn't been that great, so they haven't been able to take that leap. But they get some more three-point scoring in there. They get some better half-court scoring in there. I think that this team could easily take that rise into one of those, maybe not top three, but maybe like top five surprising teams, which could be a very fun squad because defensively, they already have it. They just need some more offense to uplift them as well.
Yeah, no, I like those picks for sure. It's tough to pinpoint, like, I mean, we still have an entire offseason to play out, so who knows, maybe it will be a little easier. But, like, looking at the standings, maybe, I think the Hornets would probably best fit this, although I think they're probably going to still make the playoffs this year. But it's tough to imagine, like, a team sort of outside of the playoffs right now jumping all the way to top three seed, but we've seen it time and again. The Blazers would be a super fun one. I'm high on them. I'd say like the Jazz. God, I don't think top three. I think that would be absolutely insane. But like, if the Jazz are a six seed next year, would it shock me? No. With Triple J and then Lauri Markkinen and actually trying to win for once, I could see them definitely making the playoffs next year. And then the Wizards as well. I don't think they're gonna be anything crazy. That's why I'm like, oh God, it feels weird saying this, but like the Jazz and Wizards, I could see as like sneaky playoff teams next year with some of the trade additions they made, and then who knows, maybe they'll be a little bit aggressive in the off season as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the Jazz and Wizards are probably more like play-in battle, like play-in bouts for sure. Like they'll be in that 7 to 10 range, trying to make some noise. Not necessarily maybe at the front ladder, but that's still good for their organizations to take those leaps and take those strides because then in a season or two they could be in those conversations once again, which would be really fun for us. Who I don't. Well, I mean, the Jazz were pretty good with Donovan Mitchell a couple years ago, but at least for us, I don't think we've seen the Wizards be good since they had Kelly Oubre and Otto Porter Jr. with Marcin Gortat. So that would be really, really interesting to see for all of us who, are fans of the NBA, at least me, want to see other teams succeed. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, I feel like those are kind of the only teams because every other team, like Indiana, Washington, I mean, I think we know they're going to be better than they are right now. Utah, I think we know they're going to be better. Like their roster is better than what they're doing. The Pelicans, I don't see it at all. Sacramento, maybe if they get the number one pick, but even Sacramento, I don't see. I kind of feel like those are definitely the best answers, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, the Pelicans and Kings are purgatory. That's where they belong.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yes, one more question before I want to talk about the Nuggets real quick because they haven't been as good lately. But another question, just like in this modern NBA, when you look at like the second apron era and stuff, do you feel like this could be a trend where we see young teams mostly based off like contract reasons and they get these crazy top picks, young teams actually having more success, maybe just like both in the regular season and playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the second apron, it definitely makes it more difficult for teams to retain those young players. Like you look at the Timberwolves last year with Nikhil Alexander Walker, it was very hard for them to retain him. And then this season, they ultimately tried to rekindle that with Terrence Shannon Jr. and maybe adding some Rob Dillingham. It didn't really work out for them, so then they had to go out and get Ayotu Sumu, which I know you're very concrete on the news there, Eamon, but like that really limited them because they had to try something new, and then when it didn't work, they had to go back to their old ways to kind of get that plug and play piece that they knew could kind of fit in for their squad. And I think for the Nuggets, for example, you can kind of look at that with Christian Braun and Peyton Watson, two guys where they've kind of had that discussion where they paid Christian Braun this offseason, but now Peyton Watson's looking really good. And are they going to let Peyton Watson walk? Are they going to trade Christian Braun? Are they going to do some other moves with their cap? Like, how is this team going to circumvent that to be able to keep this core together? So I do think for younger teams like the Hornets and something like that, when they have these rookie scale contracts or just kind of just flimsy contracts, it makes it easier for them to be a little bit better in the regular season because they can kind of mesh all together. But I would say when it comes to the playoff time, I think they may struggle a little bit more because they might not have those concrete guys to really get them over the hump, which might see like why we have like the Thunder and the Spurs making it that first year, but then fizzling out, making some more moves to get those key pieces like the Caruso and Hartenstein trades to solidify their defense to then make them that top tier contender.
Yeah, I do agree with Bruce, and I feel like I don't really have any counter arguments. The one thing that I'm kind of wondering, and maybe I'm thinking I'm like prioritizing the regular season a little bit too much, but does it not kind of feel like we're getting to a point where experience doesn't matter as much as it used to? Like I almost feel like I'm trying to figure out how I want to word this. Like I was actually listening to the Bill Simmons podcast the other day, and he was talking about Golden State, and he was talking about how the older you get, the harder it is to win a championship in the NBA. And I mean, you think about it. I mean, OKC, very young team, but they dominated and won it all last year. And if they weren't going to win it all, it was going to be Indiana, also a very young team. The year before, I mean, I feel like the Celtics are a little bit different because they had gone kind of through their battles, but very young team when they won it all. I feel like that's kind of the shift we might be seeing. And I feel like we're kind of seeing that firsthand, more so with a team like San Antonio, very young team, and they're still kind of making it work, even though this is their first full year altogether. I just kind of feel like that's kind of more of the trend right now. At least I feel like this is kind of the start of that trend, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like I said before, I've been like the experience guy. I'm retiring that gimmick. It's over. GG's. I don't care about experience. I mean, maybe that was also just because like I saw a super young Thunder team win. Like, okay, I obviously can't continue believing in something that was just proven wrong. I do think like some baseline level of experience matters. Like, I don't think you could just throw together like a team of like only like 20-year-olds and they can win. You do have to have your Hartensteins, Caruso's, whatever the case may be. But I do definitely see the point where it's like it is getting harder to win when you're older because of the contracts, but also because it's just a force to sustain health throughout an 82 game season and then going through the playoffs. I mean, that's a 3 month battle there. It's just really hard to do when you get older, especially those two factors. So yeah, I do think we're just going to see young teams be a lot more successful. I know Chris Vernon. That was where this idea kind of popped into mind. Chris Vernon on the mismatch. He was also a big experience guy, and he always had this thing they used to talk about, where it was like the 27 club, where you have to get to age 27 before you win your first championship. I don't personally. I think Verno would say the same thing. But I just don't think that's like a thing anymore. Partly because like of Shea, but I could maybe see it moving back a bit to where it's like these 24-year-olds, 25-year-olds, they can be the best player in a championship team now. And I'd be remiss. I feel like I totally just glossed over this team. Like the Pistons are another great example of this. I mean, they won 14 games 2 years ago. They had that rise as the 6 seed last year. Now they're the 1 seed, and they're another team where it's like, yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna pick them to win it all, but I could absolutely see them at the very least making it to the finals, and from there, who knows? You always have a chance. So yeah, I do definitely think this is a trend we could see over the next few years, and then even if you are a more experienced team, I do think like the two timelines sort of thing does need to be valued to an extent. Obviously, we've seen mixed results, but you do have to have some sort of young talent now, especially in these aprons. Just contractually, you need to have high impact players that aren't on like super expensive deals.
Yeah, and just to go off that point too, like you notice with a lot of teams, like the trends, like it is a lot of younger teams or smaller contracts, and then they do have those veterans, right? There's no two or three team like the Suns kind of made that non-existent last year and kind of put that test to bed, but there's no more three max contracts on teams, especially with the new CBA. And then kind of to go off of Ely's point with the experience as well, you've even noticed with the experience on these types of role players where their value does drop and then they kind of get hidden. I know, shout out to Ron Ball Renaissance, but I'm gonna bring up his boy Javon Carter in this instance. He was been with the Bulls, been kind of shrouded in darkness over there with them kind of trying to be good, bringing experience. Then he goes over to the Magic and he brings that veteran experience that they desperately need. And players like that, I feel like specifically where they're successful role players but maybe not on a team that's in the right direction, they kind of fall back into some of those bad paths because they're not given that right passage to be what they can be expectable in the NBA to be dynamic and to be impactful. And I feel like with some of those players, it's kind of harder. So I'm happy for a guy like Javon Carter that he gets to get that impact. But I wish for other players kind of in that boat that we've seen kind of in the past, kind of get those experiences as well, because I do think that that veteran experience can help change some teams late in the season or for these playoff pushes, even if it is just a little bit of a minor tweak too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think those are some great points there. Unless we have any closing thoughts, I want to quickly talk about the Nuggets before moving into our conversation about the draft. All right. So the Nuggets, since Nikola Jokic has been back, they have a losing record, which is pretty surprising. I believe it's 6-8 off the top of my head. Aaron Gordon is targeting a return on Friday, which should be really big. But yeah, have you guys sort of changed your opinions on the Nuggets at all over this recent stretch, with Jokic coming back and him maybe not looking 100% in my eyes, and then sort of like the defensive problems?
I mean, it's kind of hard to say I haven't changed my opinion on them just because of how rough of a stretch it has been recently, but not so much that I don't still look at them as legitimate contenders in the West. I still feel like, I mean, they still have arguably the best player in the NBA in Nikola Jokic. And we see great teams almost all the time go through stretches like this. I mean, it is still an 82 game season, and it's easy to kind of forget that every team kind of goes through a, a, a couple weeks, a month, however long it is, where you kind of start to think, oh, maybe they're not actually as good as we thought. And then come the playoff time, they end up being just as good as advertised. I still think they're going to be a legit contender in the West. Their defense, like kind of like you mentioned, is a concern. And I feel like just once they get healthier again, kind of like you mentioned, when Aaron Gordon comes back, I still feel like they're going to kind of return to form a little bit. I will say my concern is that they're having this stretch at this particular time in the season where momentum is everything in the NBA, and there's only about a month left in the season, a little bit over a month. So that's my concern. They don't have a lot of time to figure things out, but I mean, I still feel like they're going to be ready when the time comes.
Yeah, I definitely think. I mean, my prediction for the finals this year was Magic Nuggets. So we can all laugh at that real quick because that is a very, very wild take to make now looking at it. You know what I mean? The Nuggets with their struggles defensively, the Magic, no offensive addition even really with Desmond Bain. But going back to the Nuggets here, and why I bring that up, I still think, like Elie said, they can get to that spot, right? They can get to the finals, but it's definitely going to be a lot harder of a path than I did anticipate, especially with the Spurs being better defensively. We have to see how Aaron Gordon as well looks. I know that he'll definitely add a lot of defensive versatility, add some more rebounding for this team as well, but I think that's going to be another key integration to really look at. Jamal Murray's had a fantastic season this year, so I still expect him to be good on offense. They also are without Peyton Watson, so once this team does fully kind of come back together, they could be that. And we are getting towards, I know Elie did mention this is a bad time to be having some momentum issues, but we are entering Mickey Mouse March, as everyone does know. So with Mickey Mouse March, if the Nuggets can, I can look at their schedule right now, but if they
Hardest
can,
schedule in the league.
really,
Sorry,
oh
not to cut you off.
never, no. So I don't know about that. That disregard my point. But then yeah, it's definitely going to be very difficult for them. I still think that they'll be a top 4 team in this West. I still think they've solidified themselves as that, or top 5, excuse me, with the Timberwolves and Rockets kind of in that atmosphere. But I do think if it comes down to a playoff series, if the Rockets can match some of their size, or similar with the Timberwolves as well, it could be a very difficult thing for this Nuggets team to get there because, like you mentioned as well, Jokic hasn't been that full 100% that we have seen come back from injury. And I've been keeping good tabs on that because I got him in fantasy and I can tell the difference.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on this one. Similar to Bruce, my finals pick was I didn't go Nuggets Magic, but I went Nuggets Knicks preseason, and like even at the beginning of the season, the Nuggets looked so good. I was like, guys, they're gonna beat the Thunder. And I had that like whole take that I kept saying. I'm gonna have to retire that one as well. Probably, but you can never count a team led by Nikola Jokic out. I know we just did this like whole thing on experience, but especially just whenever we see them in the playoffs, they're really good. I don't know if they're going to be able to make another deep run, but I guarantee this team won't be fun to face in the playoffs, mainly because of Jokic. I will say, like, since it does look like he really rushed to get back for like the MVP race. I don't care what he says. Just watching him, he doesn't look like 100%. He's making a lot of mistakes, especially turning over the ball, which I just haven't seen him have a stretch where he's averaging like 4 or 5 turnovers a game throughout his career. It doesn't look like himself. And then the defense has slipped in a big way. But he's still Nikola Jokic. Even with all that, he's still one of the best players in the world. At his best, he's absolutely the best player in the world. And then the Aaron Gordon return is just really crucial for this team. I mean, I'm sure like the three of us understand, but I think the general NBA fan doesn't necessarily understand just how important Gordon is to this team. On both ends of the court, he's grown a lot offensively. He's became that knockdown 3-point shooter. He has those great cuts, the dunker spot. He opens up so much for them offensively, but defensively, I think is the real area he can uplift them in. Right now, they're a bottom 10 defense with Aaron Gordon on the court. I know that they have 110 defensive rating, which is a top 3 mark in the league. So with that in mind, once Gordon returns, I do think we're going to see this Nuggets team reach another level defensively, and I think that could change a lot for them and then sort of put aside some of our concerns. At this point, I think it's unlikely that I go back to them as my title favorite, but who knows? I can't count them out completely when you have Jokic and this such a well-rounded core around him. And then Peyton Watson is another guy, like you guys said, that will be crucial once he returns because he was having a real breakout season. So if they can be fully healthy heading into the playoffs, I think they could potentially do some real damage. If not, I think they're going to be like a tough early exit, most likely.
Could I ask you a question? As a Timberwolves writer and reporter, how would your confidence feel against going against a Nuggets team as it currently stands?
Shit, I'd rather go against the Lakers. I'll tell you that. That's the thing. Like this 3 through 6, it's a real jigsaw puzzle. But yeah, definitely, I'd rather go against the Lakers and then even the Rockets, just how bad they've been in clutch time. But I do think the Timberwolves, especially with their front court size, are better equipped to match up against the Nuggets than most teams. And then you look at the Nuggets; they don't really have like a natural matchup for Edwards. Aaron Gordon's fantastic, but he's more of like a defender on forwards. He's a really good rim protector. He could guard Edwards at times if need be, but that's not like his ideal role. Peyton Watson would probably be that best answer, but still like not the ideal Ant stopper in any way. And then you got Christian Brown, who I just wouldn't want guarding Ant, even though he's a solid defender. So I feel like that paired with their size and typically being able to take care of business against the Nuggets, even if they're a lot of times those games are battles, I feel more confident than like I would if I was a Rockets writer, for instance. But yeah, still ultimately I'd rather play the Rockets or Lakers.
Yeah, I think everyone in the West wants to play the Lakers, which is the great sentiment for us Celtics fans for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think everyone, even Lakers fans that I've like seen on online and stuff, I think everyone knows this Lakers team is fraudulent. Mostly because of the defense, but also just those three best players don't fit together on offense, and the numbers highlight that. So yeah, this Lakers team is. I'd be shocked if they won a playoff series in the West, quite frankly.
100% same here.
All right, any more thoughts? Could be about the West, Nuggets, anything else before we move ahead to talking some NBA draft. All right, cool. Let's get into this NBA draft discussion because I don't think we've done this enough on the show, quite frankly. And this draft class is just obviously insane. And as we're approaching March Madness, I felt like it was a good time to talk about it. And I think what everyone wants to know is the top three because this has been the best top three probably ever, and it's really up for debate who your number one prospect is. So yeah, of the three guys, AJ DeBonsta, Cam Boozer, and Darren Peterson, who has stood out to you guys as like the number one of that group?
I feel like DeBonsa. I've said this before. I feel like DeBonsa is the safest pick. I think he has the highest floor of the three, but I think Peterson has the highest ceiling of the three because I feel like there's a lot because okay, Peterson is obviously incredibly talented, and I think you could say he's probably the most talented of the three. But I also feel like he has the most room for improvement because he's still not a great playmaker, and if he could be in the right system, like we'll say in Indiana, that can really bring the best out of him. I think you could potentially get more out of him than you could out of Boozer or DeBonsa. And whichever one will go number one. I mean, I feel like this is kind of the boring answer, but it really just depends on which team lands the number one pick. Personally, like I said before, I think DeBonsa is the safest pick. I feel like his game is probably, if I had to guess, his game would translate the best at the NBA level because he has a little bit of everything. He can defend, he can shoot a little bit. I mean, his 3 point shot is one of his concerns, at least at the NBA level, but we've seen it a ton where players will come in, not be a great 3 point shooter, and figure it out and become a better 3 point shooter, and then they still become a star. We're seeing it with Jaylen Brown. Remember, he wasn't a 3 point shooter at all when he came into the league, and now I would say he's very much a 3 point shooter. He's not Steph Curry, but you don't want to leave him open. But Devonta has the size, he has the length, he has the frame, he has the tools, I think, to be a really good player. And then Carlos Boozer, geez, Cam Boozer. I don't know what year I'm in. Cam Boozer, I think, is incredibly intelligent. He's a very smart basketball player. He's another guy that can do a little bit of everything. I feel like with him, as it's weird because he has the chance to be a small ball center, I think, at the NBA level. I don't know if that's his best fit, but at least he might have that as an option. But I think Boozer's another guy that can do a little bit of everything. He can rebound, he can shoot a little bit, he can defend a little bit. So I think DeBonce is probably the safest pick, but all three of them have their own appeals for one reason or another.
Yeah, like Ely said, all three of them are very, very valuable in each way. And I know like not drafting for fit is ideal, but preferably I think that's what it's going to come down to when we do look at these rosters. I think a lot of these teams are going to have, instances where they could take two players or maybe all three, but truly the best fit will come come to fruition. But all three of them are very intriguing. I would say that the highest I am on is Debonsta, not just because he is from Massachusetts, but just because of the fact that I just think that wing is a very valuable position in the NBA, and we have seen that through these last couple of years that if you have a two-way level impact wing that can grow and be a foundational building block for your team, then you can be shown to have very great success in the years. I think the Monster can become one of those top tier wings in the NBA in these next couple of years, kind of with his ability to be a scorer and a pretty solid defender. So I think that he could be very, very fun and intriguing for any team that really goes for him. Peterson, I will say, is very, very fun as an offensive creator, and I think will be very, very intriguing as well for a lot of other teams. But the one thing that kind of holds me back from him a little bit is just his injury history in college. He has been injured a little bit, so I don't necessarily know how that's going to translate into the NBA. Obviously, we saw Paolo with his cramping thing a couple years ago. That hasn't really factored in anything. So this could be just some, just a year that he runs into injuries and he could be perfectly fine. But that is a little bit of a gray area that I do look when evaluating the prospects. And then with Cam Boozer, I almost said Carlos there too, Elie. I just had to catch myself. But when looking at Cam Boozer, I think the offensive profile is very, very intriguing with his size and ability to control down low. The one problem, like with Elie said, is I don't know what role he's going to be. The power forward position is still available in the NBA and is still present, but has kind of gone a little bit away with position basketball. So is he going to be a little bit more of a small ball five? Is he going to be kind of working into that forward room? That is a little bit of a question for me, like where his true role is going to be in the NBA. So when evaluating all three of these players, I obviously think there's pros and there's cons. I think that Debonsta, if I were a GM, just for the sheer fact that he's a wing and he's very intriguing, would be my pick. But I don't think you can go wrong with any of the available three prospects that you could select.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's not a wrong answer here. I feel like it's going to come down to team, who ends up being the number one pick. Maybe we'll know right after the lottery. It's like, oh, this team clearly has a need to fill at win. They'll go AJ. Oh, they clearly have a hole to fill at guard. They'll go DP. They need a versatile big man. They'll go Cam. I feel like you can't really go wrong, and whoever your number one prospect is, I feel like I can't say that you're wrong. AJ, I feel like, is probably, like, if you made me bet money, I feel like he's probably going to be the number one pick at this point, just mainly based off, like, the injury concerns with DP. But for me personally, on my big board, I have Cam Boozer as my number one prospect, because here's a guy that legitimately has zero flaws as a basketball player, and he is in some ways like a true unicorn to me. He is a super computer processor. Some of the passes he makes is just truly insane, and I'm not going to say who it reminds me of, but we might have been talking about him in the last segment. He might play in Denver, just in that regard. And then his versatility as a scorer is really big too. I feel like, especially with his size, the thing that I really like is his three-point shooting there, because he can space the floor. You have a lot of options there, but he can also create for himself at a really high level. He can attack the basket as a finisher. You can use him down low as like a lob threat, or post-ups don't happen a ton, but like as a post scorer, he can really do it all at all three levels. That paired with just like his playmaking is truly insane to me. And then defensively, he's super switchable. He's super versatile. The rim protection, I just don't think he like profiles as a center totally, which I can get how that might throw people off. But if you're pairing him with like a rim protector and considering everything else he brings to the table, I feel like he's going to be a seamless fit. And then, the other knock people have on him is like the athleticism. And like, I feel like I understand it in some ways, but I feel like it's dangerous to fall into that trap. Totally different style of player, but you look at Luka in 2018, I feel like that was the big knock on him. It's like, oh, he's not a great athlete. Well, guess what? He like reads the game better than 99.9% of NBA players. So he's going to be great. I feel like personally, I tend to value like feel for the game a lot more than athleticism. And I feel like that's where I do tend to value Cam a little bit more. And you just look at the consistency, the body of work. This guy, all he does is produce. He's never had a bad game in college, and beyond that, he just wins at every level. I don't like saying this because I'm a UNC fan, but like I would not be surprised at all if like Duke goes all the way, and that's largely because of Boozer. He's just an absolute winner, an absolute force, and for me is my number one prospect, and things can change. All these guys have been incredible. I've floated the idea of all of them being my number one, but throughout most of the year I've stood consistent with Boozer. But yeah, you can't go wrong with any of these guys, really. They're all so fun. AJ, I feel like just the upside of like that two-way win, and we've seen that lead to win at a high level. And then Peterson, when you watch him, when he's playing in some of these games, the shot making ability is just insane. And I feel like he's the best shooter in the draft, and then he has that creation upside as well. So yeah, you legitimately can't go wrong with either of these guys. But yeah, do you guys have any concerns? I know Bruce mentioned it briefly, but like in terms of the DP injury saga, where are you at with that one, Ely? Because I feel like that has been a big talking point.
It's one of those ones where this is okay, this is not necessarily comparable, but for some reason I keep going back to this. I have no clue why. It reminds me a lot of 2016, 2017. Leonard Fournette was, declared for the NFL draft, and then he didn't play the Senior Bowl or whatever it was because he didn't want to get injured and plummet his draft stock. There is a part of me that wonders if that really is all this is. Peterson knows that pretty much no matter what, he's going to be a top three pick. Everybody knows how talented he is, and you don't want to risk getting injured or re-aggravating an injury or whatever it might be. And that's more so what it is. Like, I don't know if it's a concern necessarily. Like, it doesn't make him look good, but I do feel like down the line it's going to be one of those things where he's going to figure it out. And I feel like once he's firmly in the NBA, people are going to look back and be like, yeah, that was probably a dumb thing to overthink. I think it's going to end up being fine.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's fair. Like if you're like, because these guys are all so great. Like if you want to drop him a spot or two, I feel like that's fine. I don't buy into some of this stuff where it's like, oh, this guy doesn't want to play because he could have just easily said, all right, I'm done. I'm going to the NBA. I'm going to be a top three pick regardless. But I do think like having a nagging injury is inherently a little bit concerning, especially when the other top two guys don't have the same injury. And even dating back to some of the high school stuff, he had it. But yeah, ultimately, I feel like all three of these guys are going to be awesome in the NBA. It's easy to say that every year, but it's especially easy to say that this year, given the body of work we've seen from all of them in college. And yeah, ultimately, I don't think it's like as big of a deal. And yeah, worst case, I feel like he's just going to be like a prolific like shooter. And I mean, I don't see a world where any of these guys just don't pan out in the NBA.
I'd agree with that. I feel like with a lot of draft classes, there's like one or two guys, and then there's a bunch of people that are like, maybe maybe they could be role players, something like that. I feel like in this class, the top three solidified to be at least key players, and then even when you go down a little bit lower too, I know you've been keeping a more keen eye on some of the more later lottery talents than I have, but there are some very intriguing prospects as well between the like 6 to 14 range as well that could be definite starters or game impactors for this league.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a nice transition to the question that I had. And maybe it doesn't have to be like a late round sleeper or whatever, but outside of the top three or four guys, I think we could include Caleb Wilson in there, but I feel like there's like a 90% chance he's going to be like pick 4 or 5. Is there anybody around college basketball that's just sort of caught your eye as a draft prospect?
Yes. So one person that has caught an eye for me, and this is someone that I did a little bit of research last year because he was projected to go late lottery but went back, is Yaxel Landenborg from Michigan. He played for UAB last year, was like I said, scheduled to go like around where the Suns were supposed to draft around like 28, 29, where the Celtics were too. But then he went back because he got more money Michigan, and Michigan's been a top tier team here as well throughout college, so has been able to showcase more there. And I think overall, at Michigan has been very solid for their team as well as a creator and stuff like that as a forward. So I think he could be someone that I really like going into this draft. And then someone that I've seen some tweets on, but I haven't really watched, so I got to get do some more is LeBaron Philon. I know you've been talking about him since the beginning of the season, but I've seen some other people have been talking about him. I know this is a very guard heavy draft with other guys like Kingston Flemings and Michael Brown Jr., but he's another one that I think could be very intriguing as well, maybe as like a lottery pick for a team that could, maybe get a very valuable piece too.
Yeah, Phylon was actually one of the ones I was gonna say. There was a there was a player I was trying to remember because I remember watching a couple games earlier in the year, and I was trying to remember who the player was that caught my eye, and I remember it was Braylon Mullins from UConn. I remember, I think it was like last one of those way too early mock drafts. I remember somebody had Indiana drafting Braylon Mullins, so I think that's kind of why he was maybe on my radar a little bit more because obviously I'm a Pacers writer for 8 points 9 seconds, and obviously he has that UConn. Wouldn't say it's a connection. I'm not from Connecticut, but it's like half local, it's semi-local. But I remember watching him play a few games earlier this year, and he's somebody that I think I don't know exactly where he's projected to go. I think probably like mid first round or so, but he's probably somebody that I'm going to keep an eye on moving forward.
Yeah, no, I really like those three guys you brought up. I guess start with Mullins because it was the most recent one. I mean, honestly, he's a guy that I still need to catch up on a little bit, but I have watched a few of UConn's games, and just the shooting really jumps out. I think Peterson's probably the best shooter in the class, but Mullins is not far behind him at all. Just a silky smooth jump shot, and I feel like that's a guy that's always going to translate to the NBA, and shooting is always going to be super valued, especially in the modern day game, and I feel like that translates really well. He has missed like some time, especially earlier in the year, I believe, due to injury. But like if he had like a full college season and maybe he was on the right team, like he does give like a little like Con Knipple vibes because it's not just like, oh, he's just like a pure spot up guy. Like the way he can move, and he's a real movement shooter as well as like create for himself. I feel like does give me just a little bit of Con vibes, so that's a really interesting one. And then Yaxel is another guy that I just think is like super safe, just with the defense, the versatility, and I mean he can create for himself a little bit. He's improved as a playmaker, the rebound, and it's all there. I feel like he's going to impact winning at some level. I don't think he has a ton of potential because he's like 24 by the time he debuts in the NBA, which is kind of crazy. I mean, he's for like teams like the Hornets, for instance, who might be picking like late lottery, mid first, something like that. He's a guy that I would go out and get when you already have established talent there. And then Phylon's super fun. I mean, he's one of the most exciting players to watch. Just the speed that he plays with is just incredible, and the ball handling's a lot of fun. The shooting improvement has been really big for him this year. So he's another guy, especially like in March Madness, that I'm gonna have my eyes glued to. And he's like Bruce said, I feel like he's a guy that could be like a late lottery guy potentially. There's so many guards in this class, but guess what? There's also a lot of teams that need guards. So he's just a big part of this loaded guard class. And then two guys I'll quickly shout out. I'll give a shout out to Yaxel's teammate Merez Johnson. I feel like he's a guy that's gone a little under the radar. He has emerged recently as like a first round pick. I think he should be a lottery pick, honestly. The defense with him is insane. He's a guy that can legit guard 1 through 5. Great rebounder, very good inside scorer as well. He's flashed some shooting potential, not a lot. His attempts are probably like below 1 a game, but like I think the jump shot looks decent. And he just gives me like Isaiah Stewart vibes. He's just like an absolute sicko who will go out and like die for his teammates. He'll make every winning play, and he's just going to be an awesome pro. And he is a little bit younger than Yaxel, so I think he does have some upside. I'm not saying that this guy, all of a sudden, 5 years ago, or 5 years from now, we're going to be talking about Merez Johnson as a star, but he's a guy that I really enjoy. And then the other guy that I'm going to shout out is Flory Benduga. I watch a lot of Kansas, obviously, because I like DP, but the more I watch them, I was like, well, this Flory is a really good player, and he's like everything I would want from a modern big man. The screening, the rebounding, defensive versatility, passing. Benduga, really, he does it all, and I feel like he's gone a little bit under the radar in this class, which isn't a great center class. I don't know. He might actually go back to college because right now I'm seeing him projected as like a early second round, late first round guy. But personally, I view him as like a lottery level talent, and I think he could potentially go on a big run in March Madness and really boost his stock. But regardless, just a guy that I really like, just that all around skill set from a center position. Gives me just a little bit of like Bam Adebayo vibes because he's really improved from his freshman to sophomore year, that like feel for the game and shooting touch and stuff like that. So I feel like he's just always going to keep growing, and then the defense is insane between his rim protection and versatility.
That's kind of crazy that you brought up Flory Benduga because I remember like a couple months ago, one of my friends mentioned him to me. He doesn't really watch a lot of basketball. Maybe he had watched a Kansas game or something like that. But he like mentioned him, and I was like, I have no idea who that is, and I had to like do research and figure that out. So the fact that you mentioned him, I was just got a little bit of a flashback from a couple months ago, and I was like, oh damn, that's actually kind of crazy. So yeah, shout out Flory Benduga.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's like a million guys in this draft class. Like I was decided between him and like three other guys. But yeah, no, shout out Flory. Super excited for March Madness. Obviously, it should be a lot of fun. Unless we have any closing thoughts on the draft, we do have one question about the draft that we can get to. All right, so our audience question today is from our guy Ryan Druin. He wants to know who is one team that you do not want to win the lottery.
Dallas. I just don't want them to get another first round pick. I think that or number one overall pick. I think that'd be kind of a little weird for them. Also, I'll say just for the player's safety, for the player himself, Sacramento. Do not send a player to Sacramento with the number one overall pick. Could be two, could be three. Maybe we give them the Keegan Murray treatment. We give them four. That they can be rewarded with that. But please, oh please, do not give them the number one overall pick because if we gotta watch Debansta fold away his career over in Sacramento, I might cry to myself to sleep. So yeah, no Sacramento, no Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, my answers are going to be the same. Dallas, they already got lucky with Cooper Flag. They can't get lucky again. And then I was going to say Sacramento. They shouldn't be rewarded for whatever this season has been. Uh, I was, I would say those two teams pretty much for the same reasons Bruce said. But to kind of flip the question a little bit, a team that I want to see win it is Indiana because I feel like it'd be really cool to follow a player like the Bonsar, Peterson, or Boozer, or whoever it is, and see what they could do on a potentially championship caliber team next year.
Yeah, no, most definitely. The Mavericks for me, I kind of look at it a little differently. Like, yeah, it would be, I'm not gonna lie, like at first it would be pretty annoying to see them jump into like the top three, especially if it's number one again. But just the thought of any of these three prospects with Cooper Flag, that would be sick to watch. And I would enjoy the shit out of watching the Mavericks next season, as I already have kind of with Flag, even though their team's kind of a joke around him right now. So, I'm going to say there's like two teams because it's like pretty much for the same reason. I don't want the Jazz or the Wizards to win it, which, I mean, they have been bad for a while. But at the same time, the moves they made around the deadline, it makes them more competitive next year. And I feel like just fit wise, it's hard for a lot of these guys to fit in on one of these teams. And yeah, ultimately, I'd rather just see one of the teams that like needs it a little bit more, get that boost. And I mean, the other thing is like the tanking from those two teams in particular has just been absolutely egregious, especially the Jazz. And I get it; they're trying to keep their top eight pick. I think they're doing the right thing in some ways, but I don't want to see them get one of these like top three players after just really slapping the league in the face with some of these tanking things. I mean, I don't even think like the Jaren Jackson thing is like that bad personally. I do think that was like legitimate, but like the idea of, hey, we're gonna play our starters for the first three quarters, fourth quarter, who cares? And then the Wizards have been doing similar things, but they've just pretty much had like their whole lineup out, and it's like this is so egregious. It just gets to a point where it's like, okay, enough. You guys are going to be competitive anyway. I don't want to see a top three pick with one of those teams, with all due respect. And it's kind of funny because they play each other tonight, and that's the Trae Young debut. So who knows? I'll probably tune into that game because I want to see Trae. But otherwise, those two teams are like borderline unwatchable at points, especially the Wizards. Like, the Jazz have been a little bit more competitive, but it's like, dude, when the Wizards aren't playing like Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George and all these guys, it's like, what are we doing?
I believe they have 20 games left in the season. You think over under he plays half?
Under.
Under, I would go under too. I think that they're gonna want to tank, but I think they just gotta get him out there to be like, oh, we got him, and then they'll play him for like 2-3 games, and they'll be like, all right, yeah, he's done for the season. Sorry about that. He tweaked his ankle.
Yeah, I think he's only going to play like 5 games, to be honest with you.
I see that. Yeah, no, I see like 5 games. I feel like, yeah, I mean, I think Zach Lowe said this. Someone said it, where it was like, what a great reason to get injured is? Playing basketball. What a great excuse that is. So I think they're going to come up with some phantom injury after he plays like 4 or 5 games. It will be cool to see him in uniform, I guess. But yeah, Ely mentioned the Pacers is the team he wants to see win it, and now that you're on the Pacers country as well, Bruce, I'm sure you feel the same way. But are there any like teams outside of Indiana that you'd like to see get one of these top three picks?
Um, you know what? I think my sentiments changed. Let's give the Chicago Bulls the number one overall pick because they may have sold too late, but they finally embraced the tank. And I think if any team could get a number one overall pick, especially of this caliber, and put them into a big market that could really leap and shine, it would be Chicago. They obviously have some players in Josh Giddey and Matas Buzelis, but hey, if they could get Cam Boozer alongside those three, then that is a fun offensive team if you can fill in the holes defensively and find a rim protecting center that can actually hold down the floor for them. So yeah, I'd say Chicago just for the fact that they haven't been in this bottom in a while, and I feel like for them to finally be in this bottom, they should definitely be rewarded in doing so.
I will throw out one thing. I do feel like maybe I'm just not tapped into the right community, but I feel like it's not talked about that there's a chance that the Jazz could draft Cam Boozer. What would that be, like 15, 20 years after Carlos Boozer played for the Jazz? And I'm pretty sure Cam Boozer was born in Utah. I feel like if Utah's going to take Boozer, which I don't know if they should, if they have the number one overall pick, I would like to see that happen. I feel like that's a cool story. But beyond that, I mean, we do have to recognize that there is a world where Charlotte can still get the number one overall pick if they don't make the playoffs. There is a world where Charlotte gets it, but outside of Indiana, outside of Utah, and I guess outside of Charlotte, yeah, I don't want to see Sacramento. Brooklyn would be very interesting. I don't want to see the Hawks get it. That would be too boring, I think. Dallas, I already talked about, and then Memphis, Chicago, Milwaukee. I don't want any of them touching the number one overall pick. So I think I'm gonna rock with Brooklyn of those teams.
Yeah, I like the Brooklyn one. That's definitely pretty high up on my list. I mean, I feel like they have tanked, obviously, but they also just don't have a good team. And I mean, they play hard every single night. I feel like Jordy Fernandez is an excellent coach, and I'd like to see him with a better roster. I think that might be what the NBA, wink, wink, wants to see happen. And if I had to make a prediction, I think the Nets are going to get that number one pick. I heard on the Bill Simmons pod, shout out, that the Nets have increased ticket prices by 24% for next year. Maybe that means something. Maybe it doesn't. But if you're increasing ticket prices, you got to give a good reason. And then the Bulls, I like that one because they've been just stuck in the middle for so long, and I kind of want to see them just commit to this rebuild. Just with the 20 million guards they have, I would just hope that whether it's the one pick that they get, the two, three, whatever, I would just hope they get Boozer or AJ instead of DP because they need anything but another guard. But I would love to see the Bulls just have a little bit more of a direction and just a little bit more excitement around that team because it's such a historic and fun franchise. Yeah, I mean, Bulls, Nets. I do kind of like the idea of the Grizzlies getting the pick. I like that organization a lot. Smart team. The coaching staff. I mean, Tomas Isolo, he's had his ups and downs, but generally just a smart organization. And they're another team that I feel like, while they are clearly leaning into the rebuild, they've also just been like awfully unlucky with some of the injuries they've had. And I feel like, just getting some young talent in there would really help them. I love Cedric Coward. Jalen Wells is fun. Zach Edey. All these guys, they have some fun young pieces. And I'd just like to see another star in Memphis. I mean, we saw just how fun that team can be when they have a star, and that market really embraces him with John Morant, obviously, before his fall from grace. So I'd like to see just another star in Memphis, a small market team. I've just always kind of rocked with the Grizz, so I'll shout out the Grizz there. Also, I'm glad that Ely balanced out the Jazz hate that I had earlier because I said the Jazz, I don't want them to get the number one pick, but I'm happy you balance it out there. All right. I think we can wrap up here before we officially close out the episode, though. I'd just like to give you guys a chance to plug your work, tell our listeners where they can find you at.
All right, so you can find me at Twitter on where is it? Right here, Bruce Velez. There we go. I'll point it out right where I tweet about the Phoenix Suns. I work for SB Nation's Bright Side of the Sun website where I write articles for them. And then recently, I joined the Fan-Sided family alongside these other two, and now I'll be contributing for Elie's site. 8.9 seconds for the Indiana Pacers. So you'll see some more writing revolving around the Pacers as well, getting into their kind of little bit of a rebuild this season, kind of retool, kind of freshening the things. But then going into the offseason will be very exciting. Obviously, anticipating the draft pick, who they could take if they get the pick, and then, their offseason with them trying to be in that resurgence. So that will be super fun. And then, yeah, YouTube as well. You can find me at Switch City where I do NBA videos. Been slacking on that, but going to be getting back on that soon. So, yeah, lots of avenues to find my content.
Yeah, and like Bruce mentioned, you can find my work at 8.9seconds.com. You can find me on all social media, maybe. My name should be around here somewhere. And then I also recently took on a senior writer role at thesixersense.com, so you can find some of my work there too.
All right, appreciate you boys hopping on. Make sure to go check out all of their work. The boys are doing new things, which is awesome. So yeah, peace out. Gonna close out the episode here. Catch you guys on the next one.
Later, man.
Thank you again, Eamon. It was a wonderful time.
Sure.